Hello and welcome back to the Football Heritage podcast. I'm your host, Rory Bryce, and today I've got the pleasure of being joined, first of all, by Laura Gates.
Hello, thank you for having me. Absolute pleasure to be invited on and, love all the work that you've been doing. So, yeah, looking forward to talking all things Goodison and Everton and photography, I guess.
Nice one, Laura. Thanks very much. Huge fan of the photos and all the other work that you put out there as well. And I'm also joined by Chris Wardle. Chris, how you doing? Thanks very much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to the chat.
Yeah, me too. It's gonna be a weird one because we're recording this on the Friday. The last fixture for the men's team at Goodison is taking place on the Sunday, and then we'll obviously be releasing this on the Monday. So, obviously, quick turnaround, and it's been a quick week as we've been planning it as well as we found out with different news releases and things like that. But this is going to be our goodbye to Goodison episode, and we are going to be talking about everything Goodison Park, obviously everything Everton, but more importantly, talking about the culture of Goodison, how the supporters have made it this incredible ground, all the intangible elements around that, because I think all of our listeners would agree that Goodison is one of the most iconic stadiums in the country, and it's a bit of a relic in terms of what's left, especially where Archibald Leach's work is concerned, which could be a separate episode in itself. But I, for one, am delighted that it's not getting demolished and is actually being put into reuse. So we're going to be talking about everything to do with Goodison Park and the things that make it what it is, including the atmosphere and the fans. But before we get started, Laura, first of all, if you want to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Laura, and I'm a Everton fan, obviously, first and foremost, and I'm also a photographer, really passionate about my sort of photography, and sort of in recent years, really, I've been documenting Goodison Park, the fans, and as you say, that sort of fan culture as well, and just sort of the general sort of match day routine of what people are doing outside the ground, more than sort of in the ground. It's mostly that sort of pre-match, pubs, chippies, fan zone, people gathering in their groups in certain areas around the ground, and the sort of iconic sort of little places around Goodison Park, the church at St. Luke's and things like that. So, that's sort of me really, as I've just kind of been building this, I guess, portfolio of what is essentially my match day routine. That's kind of how it started for me, is that, I was just taking pictures on my phone a few years ago, and then I started playing around with 35mm film cameras and stuff like that, and it's just really snowballed from there. And I owe a lot of that to the fan base, really, because people have wanted to see more and more and more of what Goodison looks like through my lens and from my point of view and perspective. And I think it creates a lot of authenticity when it comes from someone who is a fan sitting in the stands. And I think Chris will probably agree with that too. He shoots a lot of film photography as well, and also from a fan's perspective. And I think that's something that you don't always get to see. Obviously, we have fantastic photographers who do a lot with like Getty and everything else. And to have that sort of point of view from fans' perspective is brilliant, and we're not short of it at Goodison, to be fair.
Yeah, no, that's class. I think you're spot on. We all love the shots of our stadiums, like from a drone or from inside the ground when it's empty, or like from up in the stands when there's like a game on and teams are lining up or whatever. But like, it's only really been in the last few years there's started to be this really kind of strong push to show off. Well, where's the guy ordering his fish supper where he's got a hat on with all his badges on? Do you know what I mean? Or the guy's having a pint, or the kid running about in the concourse before the game. Like, that's what fan culture is for me. And for me, capturing the experience of going to a football game shouldn't all be about the big shots with the players in, because ultimately those guys are on the field for 90 minutes and that's all they're doing. What we really want to see is the people in the stands, how they react, the emotions, the things that they're doing, because as I've just said, that's what fan culture is. And as I've said a few times in this show, the kind of ritualistic things that we do as supporters before every single match day is something that we need to preserve and push as being culture. And I don't mean culture in the sense of how we always say fan culture. I mean recognised culture that fits all of these different levels of policy and whatever else. Because it's not just 90 minutes for us, it's a full day out. We go to the same, burger vans, we go to the same pubs, sing the same songs, meet the same people, go to the same meeting spots. Like it's this whole cultural, ritualistic thing that we all engage in, and being able to capture and preserve that is magnificent. And it's fun as well, like through works like yourself, Handball, Terrace Edition, and other publications like that. Like I've started doing a bit of film photography as well, not to the same level as you guys. It's very, very amateur, but like it's great fun, and it's weird looking through a lens and seeing what people do and being able to capture it. Like it is just magical. Chris, as Laura's just alluded to, you do similar, but you also have another role within a museum at Liverpool, which is really fascinating. So tell our listeners a little bit about what you do as well.
Yeah, so I am an Everton fan, season ticket holder. I, like Laura does, go around the ground taking photos of the fans, capturing that culture, rituals, routines, like she said. But I'm definitely not in the same ballpark as Laura is. Like absolutely, like the level that she gets to is amazing. But I did it for a bit of fun that has now kind of snowballed into something that I actually wouldn't be without on a match day, and it has then transpired into a exhibition at the Museum of Liverpool, which is called Goodbye to Goodison. Maybe not as aptly named now as it probably was when I first thought it up. But basically, Goodbye to Goodison captures all that we've just spoken about in the final season. So the emotion, the pubs, the meeting places, the families meeting up and having those kind of moments before they go into the ground. That's what's important to me in my photography and in the creation that I've done with the exhibition. It's all about the people. So every photo on display has got some copy with it as well. That is the photographer telling their story of why they took that photo. And what the feedback we've had is that's the stuff that has been like the most impactful for people. The photos are amazing, but you put them with the captions, and it just brings this whole story together of what Goodison is from around the ground. So yeah, it's been an amazing experience to put it together, and that's what I've been doing in a nutshell for the past 8 months, really, working with 8 other amazing photographers and really kind of trying to tell that story of Goodison and hopefully do it a bit of justice in its final year. Because like you said, there's so much of like the Premier League glitz and glam in football these days, but what the Premier League's always been sold on is the strength of the fans and the strength of fan bases around the country. I'm not even just talking about Goodison, but I think especially at Goodison in the past few years, we've really kind of pulled everything together. It almost dragged the club through terrible times, and
100%.
We've tried to we've all been trying to capture that in our own way. And I think the varied nature of it is what I'm also interested in, because I didn't want Goodbye to Goodison to just be my fan experience. I wanted it to be Laura's, I wanted it to be other people who are photographers there, and make sure that other people who go to the exhibition can see their experience of what a match day is, and it's not just mine. So yeah, it's a lovely varied display in my opinion.
I was going to say there's one picture that is displayed that I just think is absolutely brilliant, and it kind of summarises Goodison so well, and that's the photo from Steve Curry of the painter, and is it a painter and decorator or window cleaner, who's like painting the outside of a house with a ladder, and you've got Goodison and like literally inches away from him, and the match going fans just walking past. Yeah,
it's just a fabulous photo. It's just captured for one person, that's a normal day. They're painting their house, they're going on with their lives. For some people in the background, it might be the last time they were visiting Goodison.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so amazing about it as well, is obviously for me one of the big things has been community, and that's one of the big things at Everton, obviously being in and around L4 and Everton in the community itself as a charitable arm of the club, but actually how ingrained into the local community the stadium itself physically is, but also everything else that they do. And I think that is exactly what Steve has captured in one image, and also he shot it on film as well, which I think just makes it so much more perfect.
I actually don't know if there's many grounds that are like Goodison in that way. It is so kind of ingrained in the community, but also the size of it, there's still old grounds, you've got Turf Moor and places like that around the country, but they're of a kind of smaller level of Goodison. Goodison was the premier football ground for decades in the country.
That's true.
It shouldn't be forgotten, because actually, I think the other argument is Celtic Park was the first purpose-built football ground.
So I think they were. It's interesting because they were both opened or whatever at the same time.
Yeah, we've always danced around whether we say first purpose-built in England or first purpose-built in the world, but I think we could both argue the toss on that one.
I'd say so. And it's interesting, Chris, because obviously, you've got this whole, like Laura, you're capturing these raw moments, but then, and again, this is maybe from more of a pure, like, kind of heritage nerd perspective, right? You've also got the job of curating an exhibition, which is very difficult and is very complex in itself, and there's a lot that we can unpack from that. What images do you choose? What do you leave out? What have you chosen to leave out? Like, it's incredible, but as Laura's just said there, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later in the episode. So I was at Goodison for Everton versus Manchester United. It was my first time there, first time in Liverpool actually, first game in England that I'd ever seen, and obviously being, the whole Scotland v England thing, Scottish football v English football, I was like, this will never compare to us. And like, I've just been completely proven wrong because, well, for a start, I know you guys can have a pint in the grounds, which is good, so that's already one up over us. But I mean, there's a few stadiums in Scotland that I can think of that are ingrained in the communities in the sense of, geographically with the housing surrounding them. So Motherwell and Kilmarnock probably come to mind the most. Dundee and Dundee United to a lesser extent.
Hibs.
Yeah. And Tynecastle as well, actually. In fact, Tynecastle I'd probably maybe say was closest to Goodison in terms of, looking down the streets and you can see there when you're standing in Gorgie. But in terms of the size and scale of Goodison, to see a ground like that, and literally you have pubs and houses, and I mean quite literally across the road, like 10 steps. It blew my mind, like completely blew my mind. And I remember the day before the match, me and my friend, we'd done the stadium tour at Anfield, right? And we decided to go a walk after it. So we went up to Everton 1, and then we walked around the corner to like the Aldi or whatever. And literally everywhere you go, there was Everton community initiatives and stuff like that around the corner from that. There's murals, there's club badges everywhere from one or the other. It's an incredible hotbed of football, that little kind of square mile near the ground. But like, I was just completely blown away by how close Everton actually is to the community that it represents. Mental.
We moved from Anfield, so it was never too far that we moved, but
never far from the origin point.
Unfortunately, sired what came to be Liverpool Football Club. For better or for worse, like that's what it is.
It could have been Everton Athletic, couldn't it?
No, well, that was the original name, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We were going for, and it got turned down. But yeah, I mean, Goodison's been there for 133 years. Like, Anfield is, I mean, it's probably not the same ground actually with Anfield, so it doesn't count. And it was slightly different. I think it was like a multi-purpose sports area, that place. But yeah, like for 133 years, you've been looking at one of the best stadiums in the country that now looks quite old and tired, and it still looks great on camera. You go and see it, and it's a beautiful place. But you try and get a pint down by my seat, and honestly, I can't get a pint if I don't leave the match a little bit early or miss the footy. So that's that type of thing that just doesn't quite move with the times, and it's sad, but it's good that it's getting its second life with the women's team, and I hope they get to put the stamp on it. Like, that's the thing for me. I don't want it to just be a relic. If it's going to be used, I want it to be transformed and changed to make it fit for purpose for a growing women's sport.
Yeah, I think it will be. I think that's one of the things, isn't it? It's like probably preserving some of the iconic pieces and parts of Goodison, but revamping it in a way so that it is modernised and is fit for purpose and things like that. Because, as you say, trying to get anywhere on those concourses for on a busy match day is an absolute nightmare. I mean, it's part and parcel of the football, really, or has been. But obviously, like, moving with the times now, that people want to be able to get a pint in their food quite quickly and be able to move out of the way and stand there with their mates and have their pints. But if you queue down in the main stand, you get to the front and you might not have anything left. It genuinely happened to me so many times.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it's charm and it's all part of, like, your magical match day experience. But once you've been the match for the 10th time that season, and it's the 10th time you haven't been able to get your half-time pie, it gets a bit tiresome.
Yeah, it's charm until it's not. Do you know what I mean? Like, you acknowledge it as part of the charm, but also something that really annoys you and frustrates you. It's the same with Celtic Park for me. I mean, unless you're coming up or down London Road to go to the game, there's not really much around Celtic Park, to be honest with you. It's about a 10-15 minute walk from the ground to the kind of top of the Gallowgate, and then going down the other way is just, industrial parks and stuff like that. So it's fairly bare, but like at half time, obviously we can't drink in the grounds at all, but at half time, like going for pies and stuff is just chaos. Do you know what I mean? And it's the same everywhere, no matter where you go. But I mean, one of the most impressive things for me about Goodison, anyway, one of my big interests in it is that it's one of the last surviving examples of an Archibald Leach ground. I think it would be remiss of us to not touch on that, because, well, I mean, you've obviously got Craven Cottage and you've got Dens Park. Where else have you really got left that's to the same standard as Goodison? It's not very many. Well, I mean Ibrox, but that's an entire stand, and that's a little bit different. But what I'm quite glad about is that not only is the ground is now not being demolished, which is fantastic. It's being reused for Everton Women, but also at Bramley Moor Dock, they've recreated Archibald Leach's kind of signature lattice design, which is a really, really nice touch. Like, that's, you see, from a heritage perspective, just acknowledging that part of your history is absolutely phenomenal from the club and the designers.
There's a few sort of elements and nods to it around Bramley Moor Dock as well. I think there's like benches, isn't there, or something out in the sort of near the fan plaza and stuff that've got little bits on them, and the sort of railing as well that's got the Archibald Leach, and when the sun hits it, it creates and casts a nice shadow on the floor, so you can see it, and it's like, that's what us photographers are going to love, when that sun hits it and we can get all those arty shots of like the shadows and fan shadows like walking past.
Those 5:30 kickoffs when the sun's setting behind the stadium. I'm looking forward to some of them. But yeah, like going back to Goodison and the Leach stands, like I think we've got 3. Of course we have, because the park ends the new build, but the other 3 stands are all Archibald Leach stands, and all kind of, I think they're quite innovative in the way they were done. So obviously you've got your Bullens Road, which is the famous lattice work, and the Bullens Road is still the original stand. You can see it in the floorboards. Like, it's soaked in heritage. That it's crazy how beautiful that stand is. And then you're looking at opposite the main stand there. I'm sure it's the first 3-tiered football stand in the country. So you're looking at like some stands that are immeasurably important in football, and that's quite nice to know that that's part of your football club. Even if it's going to change in the next few years, I still think that part of Goodison being that classic experience of what football is has been something that we have to be proud to have been a part of, and having our kind of cultural identity.
I would love it if we could in some way take like a piece of that Archibald Leach like feel. Well, haven't Sunderland done it though? They've got like a piece of it in the car park. Because I attended a talk at Goodison a few months ago. I can't remember his name now, but he'd spoken about, well, all of sort of Archie Leach's work really, and to be honest, from my point of view, I had never really known just how many stadiums that he'd had sort of a hand in. I thought, Christ, Anfield as well, I'd had no idea. I think there's some debate over that, but I thought we were special. But he was like the architect at the time, but I would love it if in some way they could preserve like a section of that and keep it and take it over to the new stadium. I think that would be a really, really cool like sort of artifact to keep and have on display, whether it's like almost in the form of like a statue or something. I don't know. I don't know how it works, but
I wonder what would happen with that now, with the new plans, with it being taken over by the women's team, because obviously when we thought it was getting deconstructed and knocked down, the museum were interested in what they could collect from the stadium. Seats were spoken about, things like that. Even just like your little signs that say please keep off the grass and things. Like Museum of Liverpool's there to collect Liverpool people's culture. Everton Story is a massive part of that. So I mean, I don't know if the lattice work was ever part of that, but it's definitely something that I was keen for them to have a look at. And obviously that might change now, but that's definitely something that I love that idea of taking it over to the stadium.
Even like the old turnstiles, because I haven't really had a chance to look at I've just seen the sort of images they released, was it yesterday, of what the plans are. Even if they could have like an old turnstile somewhere on display, because I don't know if you noticed when you're walking in, there's like, it says like welcome to Goodison, like hand painted on the turnstiles and stuff like that. And then when you look to either your right or your left, when you're walking in, there's kind of like hand painted bits of whatever it might be. In fact, I'll send you a couple of pictures of what I've got of those, so you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. But yeah, I think all those kind of little They make it so much more like personal.
Yeah, I always go back to that. There's a sign that always used to get put out as like grass grows by the inch and is ruined by the foot. I think someone just made that once and it's been there for decades. But there's also like the groundsman use this old like trolley of some sort that is just painted. It says nil satis nisi optimum around the outside, and they clearly just painted it themselves. But it's beautiful. Like it's those things that have built up over time as well. Like someone's just made that, and then someone's gone, "That's great. I'm going to carry on using that." And that person might still be there, might have moved on, whatever. Like, but that type of thing is probably not going to happen in a new ground because everything will be fancy and the club will buy everything. But those little quirks are what make Goodison a bit special, I think.
Yeah, there's just so much that remains from the people that have come before. And it's interesting what you said, Laura, about different grounds and what they do when they're moving out and the old ground gets demolished. So Spurs, I don't know if there was anything of Archibald Leach left at White Hart Lane when it was demolished, but as far as I remember, they used some of the crushed and condensed rubble from White Hart Lane for the new walkway up to the Spurs Stadium or something like that. Obviously, with Celtic, we've got the original stained glass window for the front facade of what was the Archibald Leach main stand. We've got that now inside the ground because obviously that stand is now gone. Hearts kept the mosaic from their main stand, but moved it round to, I think, the Gorgie Road end, if I remember correctly. Main stand also by Archibald Leach, now also gone at Tynecastle. That was demolished 12 years ago. So it's that type of thing where clubs always take these little relics that have been there for so long and move them around the place. And it would be nice if something like that could make its way over to the new ground, because what I quite like about Goodison and what's almost become part of the heritage of Goodison is that despite the war, despite expanding, despite the Taylor Report, especially all these things that made sweeping changes to how our football experience is today, Goodison survived through all of that, which is amazing. I mean, obviously the original park end was demolished and a new stand was built for the Taylor Report, but for the most part, it's remained the exact same. And this has become a real sort of, I don't know what the word would be, like a kind of cultural flagstone with a lot of Everton fans and Goodison's identity, because it's like, it is just like a relic. It's a remnant, and it's one of the last remaining things of how football was before this kind of modern shift took place.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it is like you said. There's places like Fulham. There are Craven Cottage. Sorry, there's loads of different grounds that do show that, but on a smaller scale. I think that's the thing that I always come back to is just the vastness of Goodison. When you think about that in like it was the 60s or the 70s when that 3-tier stand was made. Just imagining what that would have been like at that time. You know, we were talking about all these little like quirks and relics that exist. They didn't exist when Goodison first came. Yeah, so why won't it happen in the new ground? Like, we're the people who get to start those traditions in a new ground as well. We have to look at it in that way as a privilege.
It's true.
Still kind of looking back at Goodison right now, but soon we'll get to start looking forwards and thinking about what they look like in the new ground.
The nil satis thing, I always think it's a really cool piece of like Everton heritage history, and it's so photogenic as well and really cool to just look at. I like that's something as well I'd love for them to take to the new ground. And I think all these kind of, as you say, it's weird to think that potentially people now are going to be paving the way for history in however many years at the new Everton Stadium. And you know, it's quite profound feeling, really, isn't it? And you've got the Everton Way that they've been installing as well, the stones that people have bought, and they're kind of, you know, when that's opened up and everyone could see it on a match day, that's going to be pretty special and pretty moving as well for people who have bought stones in memory of other people, which also is kind of weird. Like, it was one of those things with Goodison where I'm glad it's not being knocked down, because a lot of people have got ashes spread there. People have got like memorial things spread there. Dixie Dean, his ashes are there under the centre circle, if I'm not wrong.
And then is it Ted Sager, who's like one of our very goalkeepers, is in the Gladys Street goal.
Yeah, it's you know, if Goodison was getting bulldozed, I just couldn't even imagine. You know, for some people, you know, when they're saying it's not you're not saying goodbye now because it's moving on into kind of like a different era. But for a lot of people who've potentially got emotional connections with people who had their ashes spread there, or whatever it might be, in some kind of memorial, it is kind of saying goodbye to them if you're not going to be there every other week.
That's true. Yeah, I'd never thought of that though. It is a really good point, and I think that people always forget. I think that a lot of football fans do actually have their relatives and loved ones' ashes spread at the football grounds that they loved. It could be Everton, it could be Celtic, it could be whoever. Do you know what I mean? And actually, when these stadiums are demolished, then that place of memorial becomes lost. So that's actually a really good point, Laura.
So I think this gives people that opportunity to still be able to go and hold on to that connection that they've got, because it's not just the building, is it? It's for a lot of people, it's everything. It's an escape from work and real life. It's seeing the mates that you only see every other weekend. It can be absolutely everything for some people. Chris is already starting to go. I can see it in his eyes.
Like, one of the things that I always find the most poignant is you see like funeral cars go past, and that always gets me. Like, that's such an honour that someone feels like that should be a part of the last days kind of preparations like that. I don't know if people would do that with the new stadium yet. It will do at some point.
I think it will always be Goodison for a certain generation, and I think if it's like struck down in the next 10 years or so, I think I'd be like, I'd want to go past Goodison. That's like where me and my mum went to the match, and where me and my family went to the match, and uncles and cousins and stuff like that.
That's the thing for me about footy, is that connection with people, rather than, it's not even always what's going on the pitch, because that whole meeting my mates, and I see a lad that I went to school with since I was 11 every week there. I went for the first time on my first season ticket with a lad who I went to school with, and met up with him a couple of weeks ago to do a thing with him, and it's just like those it's a way of bringing people back into your life, almost. That
I wouldn't be with Connor if it wasn't for Everton. Like, I've known Connor now for 14, 15 years, and that was mostly through Twitter, but both because we supported Everton, and then it spirals into knowing each other in real life from going to the match, and then being in the same friendship group, and then here we are, and we've got a house and a dog together, and you think that's like, yeah, bloody hell, Everton. It is for a lot of people. It's the reason I know Chris. It's the reason I'm friends with people who are from America, from Australia. Like, just literally, like, Everton has brought me, and Goodison has brought me to like all these different people that, away from the terraces and away from all the nooks and crannies of Goodison, like, I would never have met any of these people, and they're people who have had life-changing effects for me, really. Like, as much as Chris isn't going to admit it, like, him getting me involved in the museum display has been incredible. Like, it's almost life-changing, like, all the things that I've been doing off the back of everything. Like, and these are just people that have come from being at the ground and at the match and at Goodison. And
I think there's that openness as well, isn't there? Like I didn't know you before, and I followed you on Instagram because I liked your photos. And then when I had this idea for the exhibition, it was very easy to reach out to people, because it is like a bit of a family. Like, you might not know each other, but you can speak to someone and be like, do you fancy doing this? And everyone who I asked was like, oh yeah, 100%, let's go, let's do it. I got involved and really like fully committed to it. So yeah, like, loads of the time I feel like I've been speaking about Goodison and expecting to talk about the bricks and mortar, and it always just comes back to that. Like, when I'm meeting my mates, or what pub are we going to, and what's your favourite like place around the ground, and like that's probably the same in most football grounds, but it's obviously just extra special there for us.
But it's like what you were saying though, Chris. It's interesting. So, like, I'm from a pretty small town, sort of 20 miles southeast of Glasgow. Primary school that I went to was a Catholic primary school, but obviously Catholic Celtic kind of comes hand in hand. And it was weird because, like, my primary class, there was only 13 of us, right? So pretty small. Went through high school, and then everyone sort of, drifts off. They get different friend groups, go and live their lives. But the one place where I will consistently see these people that I grew up with is at Celtic Park, because we all support the same team. And what's weird is that even though, like, through primary and high school, we might not have got on with each other or liked each other, we might have fallen out or whatever, but it's like now that we're adults and we're at Celtic Park, we have this common ground. We always speak to each other. That's part of what makes football so special, is that it brings you and people within your life back together. Like, it's just this thing that's always overhanging you. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a common ground that you know connects you to all these other people who have come through, like, your life, which I just find absolutely phenomenal. It's an incredibly rare phenomenon that anything is able to do that. But no matter what it is, like, football just does it. Do you know what I mean? And this is part of the culture that I'm talking about. And I mean, I kind of alluded to it at the start of this episode, and I'm saying to you guys, I was going to talk about, like, all the historic fixtures and that, but if people want to go and look at, like, Wikipedia pages, they can go and do that, because we're having a pretty good chat here. As you said, Chris, the chat is always about the bricks and mortar and what happens on the pitch, but, like, this is about the culture of the ground and the supporters. So why don't you guys tell me about some of your most personal moments or best stories about Goodison?
One that always, it's one I've spoken about quite a bit recently, to be fair, is for me, like, I don't know my first game at Goodison. I don't know what it is, and no one seems to know what it is. But the first vivid, like, memory I have is April 2007, when we played Charlton and James McFadden scored that goal. For me, my vivid memory from that day is being, like, in the back of the Gladys, barely being able to see the pitch, because one, I was small, and two, we all know what Goodison's like for obstructed views. And I just remember, like, my cousins and that, we were just going absolutely mental. And I just thought that, for me, I was in, I'm hooked. That's me. That is Everton forever, and I'm done. And then from then on, I was always like, I want a season ticket. And that, you know, those moments are special, really, aren't they? They're the ones that you share with people. You know, there's people that I don't even know who at times I've been at the match and have been embraced by in just pure emotion that you just wouldn't get anywhere else. Like, it's just absolutely mad. Like, it has this ability to make grown men cry, and I'm sure we'll see plenty of that on Sunday, really.
Yeah, I get that, though. It's with your season ticket, you always have, for the most part, you always have the same people around you. I mean, I've been quite lucky in that, for the most part, most of the people kind of towards my back has remained the same. But it's weird how, like, the people around you can influence it as well. It's wild how the people can have as much an impact as well. And it's sad, because I know eventually, like, I'll need to move on from that area. And when I do, it's like going to be starting all over again. Do you know what I mean? With the people around me. So it has a huge influence.
Yeah, I've thought, like, we were asking people around where I sit, like, oh, where are you going? And they're like, oh, we're going East Stand. So I'm in the West Stand. And it's like, oh, actually, might not see you again. Like never's like, not like best mates or anything, but, you know, like, it is when you turn around and chat to every week.
It's horrible. You're in the main stand as well, aren't you? Same as
yeah.
me. But, like, the average age in the main stand, or at least by me, is older. So, like, I've got me and my our fellas, basically. And it was only like this season, some of them have been in and out of hospital and stuff, and it just keeps catching me off guard. I'm like, I can't. I said to them, I can't do this. I said, if you two are going to keep rotating in hospital, like, I said, how am I going to know next season? Because they're sitting in club view, because, you know, why not? And I said, how am I going to know if anything's up? Like, what? Like, I think I'm going to have to exchange numbers or contact details or something. But, like, do you know, it's mental, because these guys, I've sat next to them for so long, and only this season am I learning, like, all these amazing things about them, and, like, there's just so many interesting characters, and that's one of the things that I have really sort of embraced, especially this season, and through all the photography and things like that. I've stepped away from just sitting in the pub all the time pre-match to just getting out and around and amongst people and meeting all these incredible characters who you wouldn't otherwise speak to. And, like, I've become pretty attached to some of them. I don't want them to move.
Yeah, I found the same, mate. Like, since I started doing it, I just did it because it was, like, not sick of sitting in the pub, but I needed something else to do that wasn't just going to Spello or going to Winslow before a match. And it was quite like a nice cathartic experience of just actually taking in a match day, because it got to the point where I've been for so long that you just kind of, I was getting there like 5 minutes before kickoff, going in and leaving as the full time whistle goes, and not really like appreciating what it is. So in the last few years when we know we were moving, it's been amazing to have that opportunity to do that. And I think like you're going back to like the people you sit around, like, we've got some characters by us and people that I know are just mad about Everton and show it in their own different ways, and some of them do my head in, but that's their football, isn't it? Like that's how they react to footy, and it's like people have so many different ways of using football as like way of getting out anger or a way of like getting out all any emotion that they've got. Like we've got a guy in front of us who I swear has never like said a bad word at the match. He always like replaces it with like, instead of calling someone like a swear word, they call them a bin man. Like, "Oh, you bin man." Right. Like I'll never hear that again. Like I'm not going to hear that because he's going somewhere else. And then there's a guy, another one who I swear he hated Ross Barkley more than he liked Everton Football Club. If Barkley had scored, he wouldn't celebrate. He sat in, and I don't know how he did it. I'm talking like last minute wins and stuff like that, and he just sit there like.
But there's so many fans like that in our fan base, though.
So funny.
There actually is so many that are like that. They are so stuck to their guns on stuff like that, where they're like, "No, I can't find any joy in this because I've already decided that I don't like it."
Yeah, I can get that.
Yeah, I feel like you've got to get something out of the game. Like, I don't know people who turn up with so much negativity, but everyone has their own little ways of enjoying a match, don't they? So,
what about your sort of personal stories from Goodison and stuff like that, Chris? What would you highlight?
Yeah, so I was chatting with the lad I sit next to. Like we worked together in the NHS. Like I don't know, it must have been about 10 years ago now. I got my season ticket next to him because the space opened up. The guy who sat next to him was moving to Barcelona, so I took a seat, and then it turned out he didn't move to Barcelona, and I just robbed the seat off him. So I've been there for a while, and we were talking about it. Like when I first got that season ticket, like we didn't have kids, we weren't married, we were just two lads going the game together, and it's turned from being like a thing we did together to this whole like wider life that's happened around us, and the match is like the one place we actually get to go and see each other now, really, because we used to go like bike rides and everything and go to the pub together, and it's just we don't have the time to do that now. But yeah, our lives have changed like so dramatically since we first started going to match together, and it's quite nice to be able to reflect on that. And without even Goodison, we probably wouldn't have done that. We probably just carried on and gone, "Oh, bloody kids didn't get out early enough, so that's why I'm late," and all that. But now we're like actually talking about like what's happened in our lives and why it's so important. And Sean, the lad that's sitting next to, who's in the display with his son, I had something I really wanted to capture, and I got a nice photo of them, and like thankfully it was one of the ones that people liked. But it's all that for me. Like just how my life has changed since I started going to matches, crazy. Like, and the experience changes as well because of that. Like when I was 13, it was like freedom going to match. I was going on my own, and we'd go and mess around in like Bolton afterwards and go down to Rice Lane because my mate's dad had a barber shop there. And then it turned into something a bit different when I was in uni, where it was like it almost became a bit of a chore because everyone else was going out to the pub and that, or going on nights out, and I was like, I've got to go to the match. Well, that's so stupid when you think about it. And now it's back to being like something that really like captures me and like drags me in every week, and it's been like that for a few years now, like where I've felt truly like happy at the match, even with everything that's going on with Everton. Like it's the place I love that isn't my home.
Yeah, I think you always, as a football supporter, if you have a season ticket at a club that you love, then you almost need to acknowledge it a little bit as like a family member, don't you? Like, and that might sound daft to some people, but what I mean by that is like this place is a constant throughout your entire life, more or less, right? Now that's not something that can really be understated or taken for granted, because it is also being with you through formative years, formative experiences, times when you've felt shit, times when you felt great, and it can also make those things happen and influence those things, of course. But it's kind of like you might always see it as a chore. You might always, or sometimes like during certain periods, like for me during uni as well, I'm like, oh, like I need to go to the game. I've only got like 30 quid left, whereas I could use that to go get pissed, right? It's like, oh, I need to go to the game instead. It's like, if something like football is so ingrained in your life, then yes, you moan about it, but you still do it because you know it's what you love doing and what has been part of you for so long. So, like, sometimes you wake up and you're just like, I cannot be fucked today, but I need to go and do it anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what it is. It sums it up, you know?
I'm like, loads of my mates are Reds. Like, probably my best mates are all Reds. So, like, it's kind of part of my identity to be an Everton fan. It's been taken not just to go on the match. It's like I actively have this like back and forth with friends because of it, and we go out after every derby match and all this. As I know, yeah, some people will be like, "What are you doing?" Like I can't get away from that. Like I grew up with these people, and unfortunately, they're Liverpool fans, but. It makes for some good conversations, so I can take that. But yeah, I think, I definitely think that it's done more than just a football club at times. And I'm not just talking about Everton. I think your football team is to you more than a football club. It's an extension of your personality. Sometimes you can switch it off and on if you want, but you know, I know like every time I'm on holiday and someone finds out you're a Scouser and goes, Liverpool, I'm like, no.
Yeah, red or blue, mate. And then that's like it's a make or break. Then,
yeah. If the first thing they say to me is Liverpool fan instead of which team do you support, it's always we're on a bad foot already.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. I think one of the things for me is like FOMO, though, isn't it? Like if there's times when you can't be asked to go to football, you're like, yeah, but what if I miss that moment? What if I miss that? Because one of the things that has really pissed me off that I missed when I was at uni and living in Lincoln was that Chelsea game with Duncan Ferguson as manager.
That as well, you know.
Oh, thank God I'm not going to get.
Yeah, at least you were away. I was at a wedding.
Oh,
congratulations, Laura and Rory, if you're listening to this, but I wasn't happy.
You say that the Tarkowski equaliser against the Copites recently, the amount of people who'd left and then legged it back in to get involved in that. Like, you know, you sat there, aren't you, thinking this is it. They're going to beat us in the last Merseyside derby at Goodison. Doesn't matter if we get a draw. Obviously, a win would have been incredible. But to just not lose, such a loser mentality, that isn't it? But just to not lose to them.
I think there was a bit more on it because it was. I think the stats was exactly even on how many wins each team had at Goodison. So if they'd have won that game, it would have meant they'd won more games in derbies at Goodison, and I feel like that has a lot of gravitas for me, like that they'd managed to do that. So for it to not happen, that's where the emotion came out for me. I thought that was really important in the grand scheme of things. That's actually like a reason not to lose a game. But I have a bad leaving the match early experience, sadly. It was not my choice, but it's actually, if you're talking about Goodison Park memories, it's probably the one that sticks in my head the most for me because it sits there as like something that just scratches at my head constantly. But Andy Johnson scored in the last minute against Arsenal, and it was absolutely like biblically lashing it down. It was ridiculous. I can't remember when it was, but it was my auntie's like 50th birthday. So my dad was like, "We've got to leave early. We've got to get to the party." I was like, "Fine, whatever." I remember sitting in the car listening to it on the radio when Johnson scored, and like sitting there celebrating, but then being absolutely livid for the rest of the journey back. Got to the party, and my auntie's kids turned up late because they stayed. So I got dragged out for them to all just turn up late to this party after they stayed and managed to watch it all. So I got to hear all about it after the good old kid left early. I was so pissed off. I'm still pissed off. I think you can probably hear it. I am actually still annoyed about it.
I can actually feel it. I've got the flip side of that. Of when we got beat by Arsenal on the opening game of the season. What was it, 7-1 in the end, 6-1? Yeah. So my mum was going to see Ken Dodd that night.
That's the most story I've ever heard, by the way.
Yeah, the start of the story is my mum was going to see Ken Dodd, and then it was getting to like 3 or 4-0, and my mum went, if it gets to 5, can we leave early? And bear in mind, by the way, this is my first game as a season ticket holder. Like, so my mum's going, if it gets to 5, can we leave early? And I'm like, fine. It really set the tone for like my period of supporting Everton, and unbelievable. But got to 5, and then as we're walking down Goodison Road, I think it was it Sahar who scored that day? Lewis, I think it was Louis Sahar who scored that day. And I could hear the really muted noise. But
I think that's
the opposite end of that.
That's a mad experience hearing like a goal from outside the stadium. Like I've had it on a few early goals when I've been playing footy before and managed to get there late. I remember was there a Leicester game recently, I would say recently in the past few years, when Tom Davies scored dead early. I think it was 2-1 by the time we got into the ground, and I got into the ground after 7 minutes. It was ridiculous.
And it was 2-1.
I was like, I just missed this because I played.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever been late to a game, to be honest with you. I don't think I've ever, even when I played football, because I think we used to kick off at 9:30 in the morning, and then I'd get changed in the car on the way.
It's funny what supporters do. And I think what all these chats that we're having just kind of points to is that the incredible supporter culture that exists not just around every football club, but that is specific to Everton fans because of the geography of the stadium and where everything is, where it is you sit, where it is you enter, and the types of things that you've experienced as well. And I think that's a hope. That's what I hope most of our listeners have got out of this, is that football grounds aren't just bricks and mortar, as Chris said. They're not just buildings, they're also these cultural hubs where people have had so many experiences that they've shared with each other, shared with family members. Generations of people going to the same place and standing in the same areas doesn't happen every single day. In fact, it's very rare. And football provides one of these things, and this is why it's important that grounds are preserved, thankfully, like Everton already is. But in terms of the culture of Goodison and the supporters base kind of more widely, to begin with, tell us about the importance of the church, because it's central to the founding of Everton and the club in the modern day. It's also still there, but it also houses the Everton FC Heritage Society, which is just brilliant. I think that's, for me, when I realised how actually ingrained in the community Everton was, just seeing all these little things kind of come together like that. So tell us about the importance of the church, first of all.
I was just going to say, from a personal perspective, for me, it's been incredibly important, in sort of the earlier days of me going to the match and going with my I say uncle, he's not really my uncle by relation, and we'd go in, in those days you'd be able to get a cup of tea in the ground, on the ground floor of the church, and we'd do that, and then look at all the sort of memorial historical pieces that the Heritage Society have got up, and it kind of is where a lot of the education of my Everton history, so to speak, comes from, where my uncle's retelling stories of when I was there for that game, and I remember being on a plane over to Rotterdam, and just being able to have those moments with family and people that are important in my life, in an important place that is Goodison Park, and obviously I think a lot of people have got a lot of personal stories surrounding that, but also, as you say, the importance of how Goodison and Everton were founded, and with it being, it's one of those things that you look at Goodison from the corner by the church and you think, that is actually a bit mad, that, isn't it? There is a church right at the corner of our football ground. You just don't get that. It's incredible, and it needs preserving. That needs preserving. That needs 100%. To stay. That at the moment they're fundraising because of the damage that's happened within the church and through the church. And there's guys at the Heritage Society, like Gaz included, that we know, who has been doing so much hard work to try and raise those funds. And I just think, how is it not getting more traction?
Listen, you'd be surprised. Sadly, it's actually very difficult to try and raise awareness and interest in preserving buildings. But so many football clubs are found from churches. Churches have played such a huge role in football clubs, but I have never seen a case of it where the church is literally at the corner of your football ground, a Premier League ground no less. I don't think we can really undersell that as sanitised as the Premier League is becoming, when people would look to make money from these buildings rather than have like heritage societies in them, it's massive. It's absolutely huge. But to have one of your club's origin points literally next door is incredibly special. It's something that really ties people to the club, and I love that about Everton.
Yeah, I think, well, St Luke's, as it were, on the corner, that's not necessarily where Everton was founded, was it?
I don't think so.
It was St Domingo's Methodist Church. I think that was based more towards Everton Valley, was it, if I'm correct? And then, obviously, like, St Luke's is kind of located in Goodison Park, and, you know, Everton never used to play on early Sunday mornings to avoid clashing with church services.
I think it's quite ironic that the last game's a 12 o'clock kick-off on a Sunday for that exact reason.
That's a really good point.
Managed to hold off for so long, and then the last one, they've going to have to cancel the service. But
we can all go to Mass and pray to God that we don't lose the game.
Which would be very evident, to be fair. I think, St Luke's for me is like, it's exactly what Laura was saying. When you first start going the match, like when I was going as a one-off, I used to get my uncle used to buy me a ticket for my birthday, and that was the one thing we had together was Everton, really. And my dad would go with me, but my uncle always bought me the ticket, and my dad would always take me to St Luke's beforehand. It was that, like, it's a learning experience. I remember buying a program that was closest to my date of birth and all that, and then you get your cup of tea downstairs. And then when I got a bit older, I suppose it was just a meeting point for a long time. It's only recently that but then every now and again I'd be like, do you know what, I'm going to go into St Luke's, have a little look around. And then recently, as part of that fundraiser, we did a photo exhibition there, a few of the Everton photographers, and just to help out a little bit. And it was so nice to be back in that space and feel like it's almost owned by the Everton fans that on a match day. Like, it's obviously got its church and its congregation, but when we go on a match day, it's ours. It's like an extension of the ground, and I think that's really cool that building, as it's like multi-purpose. Like, it is a working church, but also it's our own little memorial in a way to Everton's past.
It's important though what you said there, like that it kind of transforms over time from being a place where, you know, you'd go in and have a look around to then becoming a meeting point. Like, again, it's just one of these constant things that's related to your club, but ultimately plays a huge part of your match day experience. And it's all these little intangible things that, like, for it being my first game in England, I don't think I could have asked for a better club to go to be honest. Like, it just completely blew my mind. For all of the things that you see and hear about English fan support, like, I think I'd probably put Everton and Palace as well as being the best in the country, to be honest. The fan groups and the displays were sensational. I didn't think a thing like that existed in England, if I'm being completely honest with you. So to see and to then becoming, not involved obviously, but to then seeing more what the fan groups actually do for Everton and how much Everton heritage is involved in that was, it's just amazing. You don't get that many other places in the UK.
It's incredible. I think, you know, the fan group you're sort of talking about, the 1878s, I think they get a lot of stick on social media, really wrongfully, because when you actually see, and I think both Chris and I have been privy to seeing what goes on in the backdrop, to actually making it happen, it's unbelievable. Like, it's, people just think, they're just at Goodison for a jolly just because they get to go in behind the scenes or whatever. Do you know how hard it is to get those flags even mapped out into which areas they need to be? Like, there's a lot of planning and preparation that goes into it all, and the 1878s have done a hell of a lot in terms of, you know, our fans have really rallied together in the past few years to sort of drag the team and the players over the line, and I mean quite literally at times. And, you know, without people like Gemma and Katie and Barry and Peter and all of them doing all that work, who else was going to stand up and do that and bring everyone together to, ultimately, we're all wanting the same thing. We want Everton Football Club to be a better football club. We don't want to be fighting relegations, and, you know, lo and behold, we are, and we almost were really again this season. But all the things that go on behind the scenes, the people who are giving up so much of their time, their sort of match day as well, really. I mean, they're not doing the final display on Sunday because they want to rightfully taking the last game with their friends and family. And I think it's been incredible that Everton as a club has embraced it and has used it to, ultimately help, because I think a lot of the players love it. Jordan Pickford has spoken out about it a couple of times. David Moyes himself loves it. And, there's various players with flags and stuff. And it does help them, it gives them a boost on the pitch, and it brings all the fans together. And, it doesn't just happen overnight either. And I think, as you say, it is absolutely brilliant to see more of that. And sometimes places can just be a complete soulless bowl, but to be able to have people brought together that's actually generating some kind of atmosphere, or whatever, in whichever way that might be. I know Chris was there because I could see him from my seat, but the Ipswich game was particularly beautiful, like just looking back up at the main stand and all the ticker tape and confetti and stuff floating down, and you just think, this has taken hours and hours and hours of work from multiple different people, and seeing it all come together, and it's mind-blowing, really.
Yeah, I think for me as well, it's not even just what they're doing. They've done it in such an authentically Everton way. Like, I have this thing with the tifos, I just don't like them. I just don't think it's us at all. I'm like, Everton I've always made banners, and always make like banners on the back of a bed sheet or whatever with the blue paint, and I feel like they've obviously upped it, and the quality is like amazing of what they do, but it's still like individual banners that everyone has to hold. And I feel like that was something I don't know if they did that on purpose, but they clearly captured like what a banner is all about at Everton. And
that's a nod to the history, though, isn't it? If you look back of like the footage of old games and old cup finals and semi-finals, and you've got all the sort of the nods back to like the Everton on Magic, or the boys from the blue stuff is the one that I particularly quite like as well. And I think you're totally right in that.
I think they've done that with like the boys from the blue stuff is a perfect example of it. And then they've made one that's like the Beatles writing, but it's the Toffees, and it's just it really feels like organic, and because it's not the club making it. The club help out, but the club don't have any say in what the banners are, to my knowledge, and that's really important. Like that, I think that authenticity of those displays in any football ground is really important. That you were saying about it just then, I was reading about that like 2 hours ago, looking at like some of the ones from, I think it was Villa. I've done quite a few recently, but they're all kind of club led and cheapens it a little bit. I don't know. And as good as they look, yeah, I'm not convinced sometimes when it's that, because it's always slightly sanitized, and
Aye, well, I think that's the thing, and I think that kind of plays into our conversation as well, is that it's kind of relevant to us because the Green Brigade and Boys are two kind of leading ultras groups, have had the last few tifos and displays rejected because they've kind of got an ongoing bit of beef with the club. The club have basically decided to not shut them down, but the club aren't letting them in with displays anymore. And always on the last day of the season, the Green Brigade and Boys have had a tifo. Always. Whereas tomorrow they no longer are. The club have now made a club-funded one and are expecting people to use it, and the Boys have pulled their tifo in solidarity, so it's all of a bit of a mess. But we obviously saw Arsenal's one during the Champions League, their club-funded tifo. Like, it was absolutely awful. Like, it was brutal. But I like that idea that tifos have never been an Everton thing. It's always been banners, always been kind of like a collective of flags and colours and things, and that's what's really special about it as well.
My understanding of what a tifo is might be wrong as well. It's the big ones that kind of sit in front of the stand. I don't mind like a big banner that people like all the fans are holding. That's still quite authentic. I think it is that one where you've got to hang it from the top.
Yeah, it's that, because Villa have done a few of them, haven't they?
Yeah, that's right. There's ones that you can get pulley systems as well. But what I was trying to say there is that when you talk about club versus supporters, this is a huge thing for Everton, because for so long the club was completely separate to what the supporters wanted in terms of a vehicle for driving the identity of supporters and what you guys wanted. And I think coming back to what Laura was saying about the fan groups and the supporters, is that we can't really understate, enough how much these guys pulled the club from possibly going out of existence, because it was looking very, very ropey for a long period of time. And because of the takeover, because of Goodison, might just be me as an outsider looking in, but that seems like a bit of a footnote now. But I think we need to remember that Everton were in a deep trouble for a very long time,
Yeah, we were fighting for our existence at one point.
Literally, I think the fans will never give the club a choice, really. If you're on the ropes, the fans are going to just come out fighting. The fans were never going to let it happen.
That's very true. Yeah, no, it's interesting how like there's this distinction between like club led and support led and stuff. But I think it's quite nice because I did see that the 1878s were saying our last display is at the Ipswich game, and I was like, oh, that's quite funny. But then you've obviously said there because they just want to experience the game, and I love that. That's kind of what it's all about, isn't it? And I think that leads me quite nicely onto my last question for both of you. What are you going to miss about Goodison the most?
God.
I always say like the people, but the people are going to move with the stadium move. But we've touched on the fact that like we're all going to be sitting in different areas and things like that. So I will really, really miss that. But I think it's also those little sort of features and unique characters that actually etched into the stadium itself. So, if you walk down the Bullens Road and there's a couple of holes and cracks in the wooden gates, you can, kind of peer in and see little different bits and pieces of the stadium where it might say something like "Come on, you Blues" or whatever it might be, and if you know your history or different little quirky bits like that. And obviously we said it earlier on, but the new stadium doesn't have anything like that. I mean, you've got nods to history with like the dock wall and things like that, but the stadium itself is lovely and shiny and brand new and pristine.
It's going to take some time to build up that culture around it, isn't it?
Yeah, the character of it all, and the community. I do like all the little side streets and all the little different bits and of pieces of life that are there, and I'm glad that we'll be able to keep that with Goodison staying and the women moving there. So
yeah, I think for me, I think it is that proximity to everything that's around it. Like if you're not a stone's throw away, because if you threw a stone from the nearest house that you're on, it's bouncing off the wall. It's so close to everything in the community, and the new stadium's going to be beautiful. It's huge. It's exactly what we need as a football club. But actually, like, some of that intimidation that we've got at Goodison definitely starts outside the ground. Walking through those small streets and finding your way to an away end, or getting those bus greetings for the players as they arrive. Like, that's going to be different at the new ground, and like that's the thing I love. Like, that's what makes Goodison so beautiful to take photos of, is that the streets around it, all the little quirks that have existed and changes along with the ground. And I think the other thing as well was just the roar, the sound of the place. It does have a special sound when we score a goal or when we're getting behind the team. It's got to be the acoustics. It can't just be some sort of phenomenon. There's something there in it, and it's special when we score those last minute winners. Like, the ground shakes. Like, people have said that the ground literally does shake, and that's so special to me. It's the perfect place to watch football.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I can't disagree either, because I think one of the things that I'm most delighted about this season is that I don't like to call myself like a ground hopper or anything like that, but I like seeing new grounds, I like going to new places, and I'm delighted that from in November saying, oh man, I need to get to Goodison before it closes, to then going to do it in February. Like, I was delighted that I actually saw that through to fruition, because it was brilliant. The atmosphere was brilliant. Meat and tatty pies, absolutely incredible. Like, some of the best pies that I've had at a football ground. But from where I was sitting, just being able to see the displays being unfurled and things like that, like, it completely blew my mind. But I think, as Laura just alluded to there, it wasn't the match itself, or even so much being in the ground. It was actually just like standing outside the pubs with people, having chats, wandering around the area and seeing what it was all about is what makes it special. And thankfully, about a week ago when I started planning this episode, didn't think this would be the case, but through the week, Everton obviously announced that Goodison will not be demolished and in fact will be the home of Everton Women. I believe making it the largest dedicated ground for a women's football team in the country. And the good thing about this is, what we said through this conversation, is that in many ways, yes, Everton are still leaving Goodison to go to Bramley Moordock, and people acknowledge that. But should they ever want to return, they always can. and it gives the women's team such a massive platform being able to play there as well. So it's not the end of Goodison's life, it's a new chapter, and it's going to be really interesting to see how Goodison and the area develops around it.
Yeah, I think it's like that's it, because obviously I've done a display called Goodbye to Goodison. Like,
yeah,
I'm not saying goodbye to it. No, it's great, and I'm very happy about that. But I had to think about like how, whether that's still relevant in what I've done. But I actually still think it is, because the culture of women's football and the culture of men's football are worlds apart. Like, the women's team will make that ground their own, and their fans will make it their own, but it won't be the same as what the men's team is on a Saturday, and how that goes. Like, that's just football. That's what crowds are like. Crowds are different everywhere, and I think what the display covers on my side we will still be losing a little bit, but it's also exciting because there's going to be a new culture there that's, you know, vibrant and fresh and exciting, and that's just good for the ground. Like, my biggest hope is that the women's team and the women's fans just take it over and do what they want with it.
That'd be class.
Forget about all the people who are upset about them being there or whatever, for whatever stupid reason.
I don't see how you can be like, and
enjoy it for what it is. It's a football ground that you now own, and, you know, you're custodians of it. So enjoy it and make sure you make it your own, and, you know, really like give it its extended life. Yeah,
it's a new lease of life for the ground, I think. And like you said there, it's something fresh and it's something new. So in many ways, it is still goodbye to Goodison, because you're saying you still need to go through this process of not going to the ground anymore and maybe only visiting it once every so often if you follow the men's team and not so much the women's team. So yeah, it is still a goodbye. But like you said, it's fresh and it's new, and yeah, it's just going to be interesting seeing what happens next.
I don't think the sort of impact of it can be overlooked either. You know, there's been this week since the news had broke that, you know, dads and parents who have got little girls who have been like, so does that mean I can play there?
Yeah.
That impact is absolutely everything. I mean, as a woman myself who plays football, when I was growing up, I didn't really have that representation. I didn't have the sort of Courtney Brosnans, the Katja Snurgis, or whatever, whoever it might be, to look up to. And kids now, when I go to training with my football club and some of the younger teams are there are kids now running around with like Chloe Kelly shirts on, Leah Williamson, and you're like, that's incredible. I didn't even know that was an option for me as a kid. So to have that representation, and that's what it is, it's representation, and that sort of platform for women and for girls, like, it's incredible. Why shouldn't they be playing football? It's football. It might be a different football to what you're used to, because there isn't old, fat, white men screaming and shouting and crying and whatever it might be. It's just football in a different way, and sometimes it's actually a lot nicer.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, 100%.
I think that's one of the big issues that women's football has to deal with. It always gets compared to the men's football, but actually it's its own thing. It can be its own thing as well. It doesn't have to have the same fans following it, does it? Like you said, Laura, like, and that's why what I was saying about them, like, making the ground their own as well. Like, it has to be theirs now. It has to be the women's teams, and I've got a young lad who I got to Goodison on a stadium tour, but I've never been to a game to, and I know, like, it's great that I can take him when he's a bit older and actually tell him about what the history of Goodison Park was and why it's boss that there's a team still playing here and what went before them. And yeah,
I think that kind of summed it up nicely for me, Chris. I think is when, you know, we were chatting through the week and I said, well, do you still want to go ahead with this episode, like, knowing that this is happening? Because it kind of, you know, as just mentioned, it's kind of against the name and the purpose. And then you were like, well, no, because my kids have said, like, well, you said, well, now I can take my kids there still. And I think that's what makes it at the end of the day, isn't it? Is that you're able to pass on what you experienced and what you saw.
I said to a few people, like, there's 3 options for Goodison. It gets knocked down and doesn't exist anymore. It becomes some weird, like, mausoleum to what football used to be and just sits there without any purpose. Or it gets used, and it gets used by a club associated with Everton that is Everton still.
Yeah, that's it.
Like, what?
Aye, well, that's the thing, and any of our listeners can still go and visit Goodison now and go and support Everton Women, who are going to be the custodians of the new ground. I mean, I'm pretty excited to go to Bramley Moor Dock as well, because I never got a chance to actually see it when I was down in Liverpool in February. But I think for me, it's been about capturing what Everton is, because there's been so much photography and so much this cultural work done around it that being able to put it into words that people can hear is really important, because that's part of it as well. And I think it's important for people to hear as well why this is still goodbye for a lot of people, and what the ground actually means out with just the bricks that it was built with. So thank you very much, both of you, for spending your time to come on today. It's been an incredible chat. Just before we finish up, do you want to plug some of the work that you guys have been doing in your day-to-day? Because, I mean, Laura's got more books than my local library at the moment, and Chris, you've been doing some phenomenal work in the museum as well. So if you just want to tell us a little bit about that, we can put it in our show notes for when the episode comes out on Monday.
Yeah, I've got my exhibition, Goodbye to Goodison, at the Museum of Liverpool. It's got 18 photographs from 9 different photographers, including Laura and myself. It's just, hopefully, you can go and get a feel of what Goodison Park was like on a match day, as it was, this season. It's on until the 21st of September. We've got one photo to be unveiled from the final game, so we've left a space on the gallery to put the last one in. So you'll be able to see that on socials if you can't make it down, or you'll be able to see it in the venue when it comes out. But yeah, that's it from me.
Yeah, I mean, I've got my book, which is also stocked at the Museum of Liverpool as well, which is absolutely incredible. I think that was an absolutely mad moment, and again, that's all thanks to Chris as well. But yeah, I have been documenting game by game this season. Obviously, the final sort of men's season at Goodison Park, and I actually had a big debate when I first started doing it, when there was 2 women's games earlier in the season at Goodison against Chelsea and Liverpool, and I was like, do I put them in, don't I? And I was like, no, I should do, because that is part of this season and the history of this season. But it's worked really nicely into this, the fact that it's now going to be the women's ground. So it's great that I've got them in there and captured that and been able to document that. And
definitely,
with that, a lot of female football fans as well in it. So yeah, I've got 2 books. I haven't got loads of books, but I've got 2 books.
More than me.
Still working on that last one. Obviously, I've got the last game to go, and once that's done, it's good and ready to go sometime next week.
Nice one. Well, as I said, we'll put links to all of that work in the show notes for this episode. And I encourage any of our listeners to get down to Goodison and see it. Just go and support Everton Women. Get down to Bramley Moor Dock. Take in what is an incredible culture and community of supporters. Go and visit Everton Heritage in St Luke's Church if they're still going to be there. I'm not too sure what their plans are at the moment. Go while you still can, and just go and experience some of this thing that you will have seen a lot of talk about, but maybe don't know much about yourself. And go and check out Chris's and Laura's work as well, because some of the photographs and the curations and stuff like that are just absolutely phenomenal. And it's for me, it's good. Kind of talking from a wider heritage perspective, it's good to see football get this kind of acknowledgement that I feel it deserves, and kind of rarely gets unless it's something like a stadium closing down. So again, thank you both very much for coming on to chat to me about Goodison Park and saying goodbye to it and everything that it means to you. Thank you once again to all of our listeners who've tuned in for this. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I certainly have. If there's anything that you want to speak with us about, anything that you want us to cover, then you can get in touch with us on X. That's @_footyheritage. Or you can email us as well at hello@footballheritage.co.uk. But for now, Laura, say goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Chris, say goodbye.
Thanks so much for having us. See you in a bit.
Thanks very much, guys. It's goodbye from me as well. We'll see you all again next week. Goodbye.